I'm Matt Dixon, and welcome to the Purple Patch Podcast. The mission of Purple Patch is to empower and educate every human being to reach their athletic potential. Through the lens of athletic potential, you reach your human potential. The purpose of this podcast is to help time-starved people everywhere integrate sport into life.
Folks, today we're talking about swimming. And let me give you the headline news here. Just taking part in Inside Tracker and having a look inside at your biometrics, it's not going to lead to you being a faster swimmer. That's the truth of it. But you know one thing it will do? Is it will ensure that you're focusing on the right things so that you can bring your very best self to your efforts in becoming a better swimmer. In other words, your health, your energy, your adaptations that you yield from the hard work that you put in. With my guest today, John Stevens, we've both gone through and leveraged Inside Tracker so that we can get specific to our demands. We leverage it with our athletes at Purple Patch, and you can leverage it too. You don't need to be a Purple Patch athlete. All you need to do is head to insidetracker.com/purplepatch. That's insidetracker.com/purplepatch. And you can use this sneaky code, PurplePatchPro20. It's a great process. You're getting peer-reviewed research, education, as well as recommendations and your own personal action plan in everything around longevity, health, and performance. So why don't you do like me and get involved? Cheers. Enjoy the show. And welcome to the Purple Patch Podcast. As ever, your host, Matt Dixon. And today, we're talking about swimming. Just ain't right, folks. A serious source of frustration for so many of you. Those of you that didn't embrace this sport as youngsters, where you're doing this thing where 90% of your body weight is displaced. It's like being asked trying to do some form of sport while in space. You're almost weightless. And the technical features of swimming make the journey so demanding. For amateur triathletes, we also add the logistical challenges, pool times, commutes, the hard work that you have to put in just to get tiny, if any, negligible improvements. And then other athletes that just generally have disdain for the whole process, just don't enjoy swimming. But guess what? If you are a triathlete, it's a non-negotiable. In fact, swimming is central to your improvement as a triathlete. Not only so that you can minimize the time you spend on the swim discipline, aka go faster in swimming, but more than that, you also want to leverage it as a tool because due to the fact of the non-weight bearing aspect of the sport, it provides a wonderful cross-pollination effect across your other sports. It's a tool for you to become an improved athlete globally. And let me tell you something about that. Any time that I have taken any level of athlete and asked them to do a swim project for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, where we overweight the emphasis on swimming and let biking and running drop down in emphasis, whenever we've done that, to overtly improve their swim performance, one thing also happens 100% of the time. They become a better triathlete. And that's pretty weird when you think about that. But it happens every time, from pro all the way down to newbie. And so what I thought we would do is spend some time unlocking your swim potential today. As a time-starved athlete, how do you actually get returns on your effort to optimize your swim readiness and your splits? And in order for us to navigate this, I've invited Purple Patch swim coach and overall open water guru, John Stevens. John is a world expert in open water swimming, coaching and technique. He's a former Division I swimmer. He's worked with many of the leading swimmers in the world of open water and triathlon racing. He is instrumental in much of the Purple Patch swim program that we utilize across our individual coaching and our tri-squad programs. And one other thing that's worthy of note of John, he's only raced Lance Armstrong once in his career. But in that race, he stood on top of the podium. And what I decided to do is I thought we would have some fun today. I wanted to make this really educational, but I issued John with a challenge. I asked him to tell me 5 key things. I want you to come up with 5 principles that every single time-starved amateur should deploy in order for them to unlock their swimming speed. 5 of them, no more. John is going to give his answers today. But first, let's do Matt's Newsings. Yes, folks, Matt's Newsings. I've got 2 things to tell you about a great March Madness promo, but I can't go through today without talking about our swimming program. So in order to take part in our swimming program, you do not need to be a purple patch athlete. In fact, you can be coached by anyone in the sport, anyone in the world, or just self-coached. And it is an end-to-end program led by our guest today, John Stevens, and it's special. So many people go and get videoed or a video assessment, and it might be a great singular experience, but very quickly the lessons evaporate. And that's because it's really difficult to take the learnings from that video assessment and apply them and make the actions stick. And so we've designed an end-to-end program that has been having fantastic success for every participant that's gone through it. Let me give you the headline news in here. You register for the swim program, you video yourself or get someone to video you, I think that's better. You gain access to our special app, and then John goes and reviews it, and he has a little look, and he identifies the specific challenges that you have in your swimming. You set up a consultation right after that, and John goes through with you to ensure that you have an understanding of what's going on. You review that with the voiceover and the diagrams. And when you have the consultation with John, you then have an action plan. And he creates a customized personal action plan with the key drills, ensuring you understand why you're doing them and how to execute them properly, and then even the specific swim sets that you should integrate into your programming. And you go away and you implement. But there's one special thing that we add to it, and that's the bookend, the other side of the equation. After 4 to 6 weeks, you repeat the whole process with brand new videos, side by side, objective improvement in your swim performance. Guaranteed, promised. And it is all you with John. And in fact, if you are coached and you want to bring your coach into the equation, John is happy to collaborate with the swim coach and ensure that they understand some of the recommendations that he's pointing out. And so you don't need to be a part of Purple Patch, but you can gain access to who I think is one of the world leaders in swim technique specific to open water swimming. So that's our first promo. If you're interested, feel free to reach out to info@purplepatchfitness.com. And as ever, Barry is going to put the link in the show notes, and you can just easily access and register there. We'll take care of it, and please do let John know that you heard about this on the podcast so that he can give you some extra special love. The second thing, I need to get this in. March Madness. Goodness me. Yes, it is March. I can't believe it is. We're a little bit nuts. And the Yankees do love their college basketball. It's kind of that time of the year. So we are doing something very special for March. You might have heard that our program has been completely reimagined. Yes, the Tri-Squad coaching program. It is from the ground up brand new. We're now on Training Peaks. Fantastic increase or improvement in our user experience. We have completely redesigned and rebuilt the program. We also have the upcoming release of our education and community platform that is outside of Training Peaks, which is a wonderful venue where you're going to get constant access to myself, the Purple Patch coaches, including Coach John Stevens from today, and a host of world experts to help you on your journey. And from the ground up, we have reimagined and redesigned the race build plans to get you step by step, day by day, delivering you to your key races to ensure that you can show up not just fit and prepared, but also fresh. And finally, a completely reimagined suite of education on every aspect of performance. Think about it. A direct promise from me to you that we can have absolute race readiness where you race faster, with no compromise on all of the other aspects of life that are important to you. Because ultimately, this is the only program in the world that is designed specifically for time-starved athletes. You're also going to get coaching, not just from a coach, but all of the Purple Patch coaching team as well as myself. And you're going to arrive to your races empowered and upgraded on every aspect. Through our live and on-demand education, it is truly a one-stop shop solution. And even that, every week, you can have multiple live coaching opportunities with feedback in real time from myself and the rest of the coaching team, all the while using the most cutting-edge understanding of training and the most up-to-date tools and technologies. We've got proven results. We don't, how can I say this, Barry? We don't F it up, okay? All of this for $129 a month. But I said that we were celebrating March Madness. Well, we don't want to dish out soul-destroying, sterile, dull, AI-based workouts. These are tailored to keep your interest and maximize results. And so if, as a part of March Madness, you join right now in March and you commit to the rest of the year, we're going to give you a month free. Yes, you get 10 months for the price of 9. That is pretty mad in itself. But here comes the really mad part. If you are one of the first 10 new athletes, or maybe you were a part of Purple Patch before and you're now decided to return. So for new athletes in the door, not currently on Purple Patch, the first 10 to register, you're going to go into a little hat. It's a very nice little hat that my puppy tends to live. And from that hat, we will pull one athlete. And that athlete is going to come to the Purple Patch Performance Center with me here in San Francisco and spend the day with myself and the team. It's going to be a performance experience end to end. And you're going to get every single service that we can offer. You're even going to come to lunch with me and have a personal one-to-one consultation. This package is worth thousands, is the truth. And you're going to have a 1 in 10 chance of getting that. That's pretty good odds. And so if you jump in now, that is our March Madness. We are going to pay for your flight, for your accommodation, all of your services. You're going to have lunch. We're going to talk about the world, but we're also going to help you become a better athlete. The details are in the show notes, or just feel free to reach out to us. info@purplepatchfitness.com. You know that, and it is March only, folks. Only the first 10 newcomers are going to go into the hat for the lucky draw. It's going to be a lot of fun. Alrighty. So I want to keep going with the education today. So just before we dive into John, I can't help it, Barry, get the ukulele out because we are doing the word of the week.
We like the way he thinks, serious with a wink. Let's open the book, it's time to take a peek. It's the dictionary word of the week.
Yes, the word of the week this week, deep. Yes, indeed, deep. Let's talk about deep sleep. You hear so much about the importance of sleep, how it is your performance enhancer. And it's true, it is a critical component to not just athletic success, but you showing up the very best version of yourself that you can. And we hear a lot about duration, try and get 8 hours of sleep every night. We hear a lot about quality and some of the components, a cool and dark environment, etc., etc. But what about timing? Well, there are multiple cycles of sleep that we go through every night, and each cycle is made up of 4 phases. And one of the key components of each phase that's really important, so far as processing some of the stress that we accumulate in the day, but also yielding adaptations, is deep sleep. I'm sure you've heard about it before. And it's really important. It's the thing that we want to protect and get. And in fact, if we have optimal sleep, we would be getting 90 minutes to 2 hours of deep sleep every night. But there's a truth that many people don't actually realize. And that's whether you prefer to stay up late and go to bed at midnight and then get up at 8 o'clock in the morning, or you're a bit more like me where I go to bed at about 9 p.m. and get up around 5 or 5:30 in the morning. Whether you're a night owl or a morning lark, deep sleep tends to occur around a pretty similar time frame every night, and that's between about 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. So therefore, if we have 2 people, the person that goes to sleep at midnight and gets up at 8 hours of sleep, or someone that goes to 9 and gets up at 5, 8 hours of sleep, the second person is protecting their opportunity to get all of their rejuvenating deep sleep. But the person that goes to bed by midnight is compromising their opportunity for deep sleep on a regular basis. And that means performance decline. And so, timing is another important factor. And there are two main things that can help the quality and the yield from your sleep. Number one, trying to go to bed at the same time every night. And if you can, try to protect that time of going to bed a little bit earlier. Even if you need to break old habits and you need to start to incrementally move your bedtime forward. If you can get to bed before 10 p.m., you're giving yourself every opportunity to maximize that deep sleep and show up the very best version of yourself. Just a little tip on deep sleep and why our word of the week this week is deep. And with that, Barry, it's Coach John Stevens. Let's do the meat and potatoes. All right, folks, it is the meat and potatoes. We are getting aquatic today. Yes, we are talking all about swim, 5 key principles. And as I mentioned in the introduction, I get to welcome, and I'm proud to welcome actually, Coach John Stevens. Not just a coach, you are a Purple Patch coach, John. Thanks so much for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Matt.
You are one of the very few returning guests on the Purple Patch podcast. That must make you feel very, very proud.
I didn't realize that was so special. Amazing.
Very special. You're up there in Maine. You're navigating the winter. You haven't done too much open water swimming lately, but I reckon your memory is pretty good about that, because you're one of the few swimmers that I know actually that, and particularly coaches, that have really, really deep and steeped experience, both coaching and swimming, pool swimming, and you know that world very, very well, Division I athlete in swimming, down at the University of Arizona with some of the best swimmers in the world, of course, and open water swimming, and particularly swim run races, which I know you don't just participate in, but you have a role in organising and leading and everything else. So you really are sort of well versed across the collision between really two different sports in one way, which is swimming and then swimming in the open water environment, which I know that we're going to dig into today. But I gave you a bit of a challenge here, and I said I don't want to have a discussion about swimming technique and swimming training. It's all been done many times before. I want you to come up with 5 key principles, and I want them to be hard-hitting, informative, actionable, and really help the listener go away and apply to their own training journey. And so you've turned around and you told me what they are. I've got them in front of me, but we're going to go through them one by one. But I couldn't help, if you're willing, to give you a couple of quick fire questions before we get going. I was going to leave this to him, but I'm going to lead with this. So we're going to do a little round of quick fire, if you want to call it that. Then we're going to get into your 5 principles. Are you up for the blind challenge here?
Yeah, let's do it. Throw it at me.
He's a man of confidence. So these are just questions that, in honesty, I was chatting to a couple of friends and told them that you were coming on. He said, ask him this. So I decided to list them down. And I said, under 60 seconds, let's get going. We're going to be talking about swimming. We are going to unlock potential. But here are 5 that are not your principles, but are just questions from me to you. So you can give me your best answer possible as a reaction. The first one is actually pretty broad, which is for triathletes specifically. What do you feel as a coach is the right amount of swimming in order to get better? What do they need to do?
Well, I think the first answer to that is how much time do you have? That's what it comes down to. You take the time you have, then you have to optimize that time and use it in the best way available. So I think it comes down to your goals, and ultimately you want to be getting faster. You want to be able to leverage this fitness. You and I have talked about this a lot. Cross-pollination, right? So how much swimming do you need to build overall fitness, one for swimming, but then that you can also use towards bike and run. So maybe in the winter, you have a little more time, that fitness crosses over towards that. Maybe in race season, you're kind of narrowing that down a little bit. But ultimately, as we coach time-starved athletes more frequently, it comes down to the time available and then optimizing that time that you do have available. So pretty individual for the person and perhaps for the time of season as well.
Fantastic. You got there very succinctly. I do just want to shine a light on that. The cross-pollination, I think so many people forget that, which is, hey, you're not just training for the swim. There is this jewel of performance opportunity there where, because it's non-weight bearing, you really can drive cardiovascular conditioning that carries on and has a knock-on effect on broader fitness in not just in triathlon, but obviously in life as well. So I think it's a wonderful modality of exercise and it's really good. But of course, how many hours have you got? Well, that really depends, doesn't it? So, okay, second quick fire question then, because I want to make sure that we can get to your principles and give them the justice that they deserve. So how do you see pool swimmers being different than open water swimmers and triathletes? This is a great question. I sort of focused on this at the start of our introduction.
Yeah, I mean, two different sports almost essentially. I often compare it to track running and trail running. You know, you've got one pool. Track would be the comparison there. It's a controlled environment. It's flat. There's not a lot of waves. You know, it's a set distance, and you are then in that space available to really dive in on skills and technique. Think about your form. Think about those things. In the open water, you don't know what you're going to get depending on where you are, time of year, where you're swimming, and the weather on the day. Temperatures are going to vary greatly. You know, then you may have a wetsuit on. That's going to change things up a little bit. You lack the ability to throw in maybe some of those same technical developments that you might use with toys. Not super safe to use certain toys out in the open water. So very different kind of approaches. That said, there is that intertwining where they can relate, and we can practice open water skills in the pool and then carry them to the open water to enhance your ability to swim in the open water and become a better swimmer overall. And then when you are in the open water swimming, you're able to work on those specific skills as well for open water swimming, with the sighting, managing currents, managing waves, managing all the different things that get thrown at you.
I absolutely love the analogy of track running to trail running, because I just envision a trail runner getting ready for, I don't know, make it up, a marathon or a 50K trail run, and looking at the technique of Usain Bolt and saying, I'm going to mimic that. And yet that is so much of what the common media does. It said, look at Michael Phelps, and that's what you want to try and mimic as an adult onset swimmer who's getting ready for effectively a different sport. So I think it's a great analogy for the listener to sort of develop their filter around what's the right information, what's the right technique for basically developing open water swimming, which we're going to be talking about today. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's a lot out there, and it's trying to figure out what's going to work best for you in terms of information, and you know, there's a lot of misinformation as well. And like you said, watching Katie Ledecky, watching Michael Phelps, Caleb Dressel, that's great. They're fast, but that's not going to help you in the open water.
That's very true. All right, number 3, before we get going, what are the most common mistakes that you see as a coach that triathletes and open water swimmers make? This is a good one. Maybe the first one is what we just talked about, so we can bypass that. But yeah, lead it away with any others.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things, and it's kind of counterintuitive a little, because one of the things, not spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about later on is drilling and working on form and technique. But one of the big mistakes we see is people drilling too much, over drilling, and you can't drill your way to speed and to success. Drills have a place. They're certainly going to help you. We're going to dive into that a little bit later. But if all you're doing is showing up at the pool and doing drills for 1,500 yards, 1,500 meters, that's not going to lead to success. On the kind of opposite side of that, one of the other mistakes we'll see is someone swimming without any structure, just showing up and swimming 2,000 straight in a pool and not getting any of those intervals in and mixing it up and finding that variance. Variance is always really important. And again, with that too, often you'll see people not swimming fast enough, just really keeping the effort level too low and continuous. On the opposite side of that, you might see someone swimming too fast too often and simply doing too many short intervals of just 25s. But it's important to mix things up and have that variety. And often we don't see enough variety in swimming when people are doing that. And I think lastly, we talked about open water. We talked about making those skills. That pool is that opportunity to work on open water skills, whether it's a race simulation, it's sighting. There's a whole number of things that you can practice in the pool. And we often don't see people doing that. And they simply show up for that first open water swim and realize that they can't sight and they're swimming crooked and they're swimming all over the place. And so the pool is the place to practice that skill. And then you implement that skill in the open water, but you have to practice it first.
I think that's great. Okay, so number 4, we'll carry on so that we can keep it brief. Alternative tools. This is actually a question for me because I'd love your thought on this. We haven't talked about it too much, although we do integrate some of this into Purple Patch programming. But when I talk about alternative tools or training methods, the sort of thing that I'm saying, and I'd love your opinion on the value of them, Vasa trainer, bands or cords that we leverage at Purple Patch, an endless pool potentially, and I'm going to throw strength training in there, but that's more of an additional one. But focusing around the swim-specific alternate tools, what's your thoughts on those?
I think there's definitely a place for those. I love the swim-specific tools. I think when pools got shut down 4 years ago, I was the first, if you remember, to say, hey, we should be doing swim cord, swim band sessions. Let's hop on that. And we were leading those via video a couple of times a week because they pay off. They do work. You're able to build some really swim-specific strength using those. You can actually dive in and focus on technique a little bit as well if you have the right approach to it. And the Vasa is very similar in that. So you can utilize those tools and improve your swimming. I think they are something you can add in. It's not going to replace swimming. You're never going to get the same benefit of getting into the pool and getting that feel for the water. I don't like that term because it's used so much, but there is a feel for the water. Everyone knows what I'm talking about when I say that, but you're not going to be able to get that if you don't get into the pool and swim. Now, that said, you can improve your swimming by integrating some of those other things, whether it's the Vasa, whether it's the swim bands, swim cords, or if you have the ability to get in an endless pool, that's going to be helpful as well. And then finally, obviously, strength. It's a pillar of performance. So certainly room to integrate that and get swim specific around it as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's super. So last one, then we'll go into your 5 principles. So 5th question, I want to sort of extend beyond that a little bit and talk about toys. So snorkels, ankle straps and bands, paddles, buoys, what fins. What are the ones that you really like and think that the sort of must-haves for adult onset particularly, but time-starved athletes that are getting ready for open water?
I love the toys. I think there's room for it. And I will say, let's tie that back to mistakes swimmers might make, not using toys or using too much and seeing that person in there with every single toy on all at once, trying to use them all. They have their place and they have their purpose. My favorites, snorkel, number 1. I think if there's only one toy, it's that snorkel. It's going to help you work on connection, body position. Breathing screws everything up. You take breathing out of the equation, you can really dial in on what you're doing and what you're focusing on. Pull buoy is another one. And pull buoy is not to limit you or stop you from kicking. It's something that's going to help body position. It's going to bring your hips up. It's going to bring you in a better position in the water. And it's going to help you get comfortable and used to that. And so those are my top 2. From there, obviously, hand paddles. Don't go too big, but something that you can utilize to build power, to build strength with, if you use them in the right way. Fins, I love using fins with drills. Again, with the fins, we're not building kick strength. Kicking in triathlon is not propulsive. It's going to help with balance. It's going to help with rotation. It's going to help with body position. But using those fins and kicking with that in certain areas, it's certainly going to be helpful as well.
I want to just pinpoint for the listener there one thing that you said. Kicking in triathlon is not for propulsion. So it's for balance, for body position, helps with timing. And I really like fins as well, obviously because we coach with each other, but it provides a little bit of patience or luxury to really get into the engagement, the timing. And so often, particularly for adult onset swimmers where their hips tend to sink a little bit, it sort of takes away that anchor point of naturally getting dragged down. So they don't have to rush the connection, the catch. They can get their timing in, get a good body position, and really sort of coordinate themselves. So I like fins, but I absolutely agree with you. I want to come all the way to the top of that question, where you basically said the number 1 tool that we have is the snorkel. And I know a lot of people feel claustrophobic. You know, they don't like it. It takes 8, 10, 12, 14 swims, and then finally have the breakthrough with familiarity. They get used to the breathing, which is very, very different. But once you get there, I think if there is only one tool that you have that you always want to travel with, it's a snorkel. You don't have to wear it on the plane, but it is a good thing to have if you're ever away and you're swimming remotely. Alrighty, so got the quick fire, got your 5 minutes of joy right there, some great nuggets. Now we're going to go into your principles. So there are 5 of them, 5 keys to every listener to unlock your swimming potential. Deliberately placing a heavy weight on your shoulders, John. So Barry, if we had a drum roll, we would give a drum roll. Here it is. Principle number 1, over to you. What's your first principle for every swimmer?
All right, first principle for me, form and technique are crucial, but they're not everything. When we talk about swimming, efficiency is everything. Efficiency is super important, and we don't want to have wasted energy, particularly in a triathlon swim. You're going to need to be efficient on the swim so you can get to the bike, you can get to the run. It's swim, bike, run. And we need to combine all of these. So being more efficient in the swim is going to help you with your entire race. And so ultimately, how do we increase efficiency? Well, we do that by swimming with better form, with better technique. And what's an easy way to dive into technique, to dive into form, is to use some drills. And so I think with form and technique going hand to hand with that is going to be drilling. And we at Purple Patch, as you know, and anyone in the Purple Patch community knows, really dove into that in what was our fourth quarter, our Q4, and really emphasized form, technique, and drilling, and took advantage of that. And so, what we tried to do is break it down in a way where each drill, we put out the purpose of this drill, how to integrate it, how to do it, most importantly, and put it in there. And so, as we said, finding that form and technique that works for you. As you said, we're not all Michael Phelps. We all don't swim the same way, but those drills help you identify areas that you might be struggling in. So for instance, maybe your timing is off. Maybe you find that you're crossing over or you're swimming too wide because your hand is in the wrong position. The important thing is understanding that and then finding the drill that's going to help you correct that and make that correction. And as we said before, you can't drill your way to success. It isn't just practicing these drills and doing these drills. It's understanding why you're doing the drill, understanding how to do the drill, and then most importantly, understanding how do you implement what you're learning from the drill into actual swimming. And so if you're going out there and you are doing a drill incorrectly, if you don't understand the purpose of the drill, I don't want to say you're wasting your time, but it is kind of a little bit of a waste of time if you're not understanding the purpose behind it.
There's a couple of things that you said there, and I want to say one thing first, because we want this to be educational, not promotional, for the most part at least. But I think this is one of the key catalysts of our swimming program, so far as you helping individuals via the video analysis and the ongoing coaching and specificity there. I think where you've had so much success with individual swimmers, remotely, Purple Patch or otherwise, is when you see a video of them swimming remotely, you can identify what the key flaws are, but then you can prescribe the specific drill to address that flaw, and even then build the specific training sessions that integrates the drill and then the execution of that drill in regular swimming, that then you come back at the end of the program 4 or 5 weeks down the line, reassess, and you can see the objective measurements and improvements swimmers side by side. I think that's why you've had so much success, because it's so different than just saying, here's the video analysis, look at this pretty angle, you need to work on your early vertical forearm, but then you're just out in the wilderness and you've had this great immersive experience, but then it just evaporates. And I think that's where, at least you tell me, where you've had such seismic change on individuals working on their technique, but where it sticks with them. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. I think, we are able to take a broader approach for our team and apply it there, but we can really narrow that down with video and being able to see what someone is doing. And so I can have an idea and say, my guess is a lot of people are pulling way outside their body. Let's try to focus on that. But if I know specifically that is what you are doing, and that's something that we need to tie in, we can find that drill. But again, even more, it helps you understand, as I was saying, the purpose of that drill and how it applies to what you're doing wrong. And we can use one drill for multiple different things, but it being able to say, this is that one drill that's going to work for you in this scenario and why. Here's what you should be doing. Here's how you should be doing it. And there becomes the challenge of remote coaching. I'm not entirely sure someone is doing it the right way. So I would say to them, if you don't know if you're doing the drill right, film yourself doing it. Let's take a look and make sure you're doing the drill correctly. Then beyond that, let's implement it. Now you have to understand how to implement those changes into regular swimming. That is, a big thing for me with drilling is that understanding and being able to apply it to swimming, and not just swimming, but apply it to faster swimming and have it hold. And then understanding when it falls apart, by doing the analysis, you know what to think about, you know what to look for. So if your form does start to fall apart, you know what that feels like, you know the drill and how to correct that. And it's that constant back and forth of resetting, applying, resetting, applying. And again, with the analysis, we can see if that's happening, if that's taking hold, because I think one of the things that is a little bit different from ours than anyone else I've seen is we do it twice. You come back through and do it again. And you have that ability for me to say, yes, you are making that correction here, or, you know what, actually, we still need to keep working on, X, Y, Z and continue that journey and that progression.
No, I think you're absolutely spot on. I mean, I think it is differentiated. I want to just come back to two other comments that you made that I want to bubble up again, which is really what you were just saying there, which is the application side of stuff. I see so many swimmers just doing a drill. So they warm up a little bit and they go and do a drill. And let's just make it up, fingertip drag or single arm, whatever it is. And then they just get on with their main set. And there's absolutely no link between what are you trying to do with this drill and apply it to your swimming. And then you made a really important point as well, not just swimming, but fast swimming. And so that through line is so important to actually do that. And that's really comes back to the principle, which is drilling is important, but it has to correlate ultimately to you improving as a swimmer, whatever your flaws are. And then the second point, again, linked to all of this in a nice bow, is that technique is important, but it's not everything. And if we just take a half Ironman distance, give or take, if you just go in the middle of the bell curve, if I was swimming a half Ironman, I might be swimming and taking 2,500 strokes. So I better be pretty fit. I better have a certain muscular endurance in order to maintain any technical improvement I have. So they are absolutely symbiotic. You cannot have improved technique if you don't have the fitness and muscular endurance to carry it through. And then even more, similar to what we will talk about later, but you want to make sure that that technique and that fitness is done in a straight line relative to the open water course, which is everything around sort of skills and everything along that. So if you're listening, you cannot crack your speed code by just technique. It's really important, but you better be freaking fit and you better become really acquainted at developing and then implementing skills in open water. So I think we've hammered that one pretty well, principle number one, yeah?
Excellent. Yes, I think so. And I'm glad you said that. Have to be fit to be able to do these drills. And I've certainly prescribed drills for people to try it once and say, I can't do it. Keep trying. Let's build fitness. And then, I can do this now because I've built that strength. I've built the fitness around it to be able to execute that drill properly and then start applying it to the swimming. So I'm glad you said that.
It's funny when you do your swim assessments, when you build out the drills that we are going to implement into the Purple Patch Swim program, because you're primarily building those drills out. It reminds me of a filter. Regular listeners will can think back to last week, and I said we have a Purple Patch filter for everything, and the first primary thing is it going to make the athlete faster? So that's really how we look at any technical development and drills in swimming is it going to correlate to an athlete becoming more efficient and swimming faster? And if it is, globally in the bell curve, then we're going to implement that as a part of the program. But we ain't going to drill for drill's sake, that's for sure. And that's I think that's a really important one. So, drum roll number 2 then, we get the opportunity to progress on principle number 2 to unlocking your swim speed. What is it, John?
Principle 2, keep it simple. All right, we really want to simplify. I just talked about a lot of drilling and a lot of technique, which adds a lot of complexity. It's a very technical sport, but again, it doesn't have to be all-encompassing mentally, which is part of the reason we do something like swim analysis or break it down is if I'm working on form with someone, it's two things, it's three things. We're trying to simplify. You can do a search on how to swim and you're going to see a million articles out there and a million videos out there, but really what we want to do is simplify. And sometimes, to swim faster, you simply need to swim more. And that's honestly, that's a lot of the times I like to give that stupid answer, because people will ask that question, how do I swim faster? Swim more. Stupid, but holds an element of truth to it. And so there is that simplicity of don't overthink the drilling, don't overthink the time you have, but simply get in, swim when you can, and swim, make the most out of it. And ultimately, we want to break it down so that what are we trying to do? We're trying to get faster. And what does that look like from, again, a simplistic standpoint? We're trying to reduce drag as we move through the water. We're trying to grab water well. We're trying to accelerate that water back. We're trying to accelerate ourselves forward in a straight line and have an awareness of what we're doing while we're doing it. So really what we want to do is simplify this, break it down, and try not to overthink it. It's really easy to overthink swimming, especially. So just simplify is the big one.
We come back to that filter on that one. I have spoken about this on prior shows, but reading articles in triathlon publications where they break down the 7 phases of the swim pull. So from hand entry, for swimmers that know it, to hand exit, the 7 phases. Well, understanding that most swimmers are spending just under to maybe just above 1 second from hand entry to hand exit, that means that we're being asked to think about 7 things in 1 second. Now, I'm a pretty smart geezer, but I can't do that, and I don't think many people can. And so I really like your concept. I'm going to try and regurgitate it back to you as I remember it, but reduction of drag, yes, that's important, really important. Grab water. I remember my former Purple Patch Pro, Aussie, Luke Bell, said, grip it, mate. That's the first thing you want to do. Get the arm in, grip the water. Good. And then accelerate it back. So many people just have the hand almost move through the water at one pace, which is a little bit like throwing the ball with no acceleration. It's just going to not move very far. So that's the Aussie Luke, rip it after the grip it, and that's really important, accelerate. Then one thing that you said there that I don't typically think about this when I'm coaching too much, which is really important. Then accelerate and propel forward in a straight line. So really taut, really strong. And I think that's a great addition. I just learned a nice thing to add to my repertoire there. And with that, develop the sense of awareness around you and pacing. And that's really it. And if you can do that under the umbrella and you build it with more swimming and more experience, ultimately you're going to become faster.
Yeah, we make it sound so easy. But I think it can be. And I think that's the big thing is, like you said, apply those filters, break it down. It doesn't have to be complicated, I think is kind of the big point I'm trying to make with this, is you don't have to make it complicated. It may seem like it, but you can simplify it in a way that is going to make it more efficient for your time and more attainable for you to get.
Yep, that's awesome. All right, so let's move on. Principle number 3, what is it?
All right, principle number 3, make the most of your training time and mix it up a little bit. And I think that's one of the big things, and we've kind of been touching on these themes a lot with everything we're talking about, but ultimately, time-starved athletes trying to do swim, bike, run, strength, how much time do we have? It's limited when it comes down to it. So make the time for it and make the most of your time for it, rather, when you're in there, and then mix it up a little bit while you're doing that and have some fun with it. I think, as we mentioned previously, again, the drills, I'll keep saying it, are really important, but they need to be included in a smart way. Like we said, you can't just go in, if you're drilling nonstop, you're wasting your time. If you are going in there and you are swimming straight and not integrating any intervals, you're wasting your time. I think, as we've said before, swimming has that low impact compared to running or biking. So we have the capacity to integrate a lot more strong swimming. Now, I'm not saying we should be swimming fast all the time. We shouldn't be doing short intervals all the time, but we're mixing it up. We're doing some fast swimming. We're doing some endurance swimming. We're doing some threshold swimming. We are doing some short intervals. We're doing some long intervals. We're really taking advantage of that time we have and getting the most out of it, by, again, mixing it up and adding some variety. And I think that variety, that variance in your training and what you're doing is going to create more of a stimulus, and you're going to get a lot more out of it. As opposed to, as I said, just going in and swimming 2,000 straight, you're really not making the most of your time, and you're not going to get the most bang for your buck, which is what we're looking to do with the time that we have available.
I was going to say two things to that. The first is, I think that you deserve a lot of kudos, because one of the things that you've introduced more and more into Purple Patch is some of the over-distance, longer duration intervals, asking people to stay mentally engaged and tension on the water, as I like to call it, grip it and rip it, for extended periods. And we're seeing a really good addition to that. So, self-critiquing myself as a coach over the last 10 years, maybe steering too far to the short intervals, but getting people familiar with holding tension on the chain for longer intervals. And that's really on your shoulders. You've introduced that. I followed along, and we've seen some really good gains on that. But obviously, on the same breath, going and just doing laps at the pool, up and down at the same pace. The body doesn't like monotony, but it's the lowest yield that we're going to get. And I think that's really important. That extends into open water. We won't talk about that now because I know that that's coming. We are going to talk about open water specifically. But I think it's so important. The body loves variance. And I think one of the things that I'm going to sort of wrap this principle up in is, as a time-starved athlete, you have an optimization challenge. And that's across the whole arc of training, but also in typically the most logistically challenging discipline that we have, swimming, that most swimmers tend to only be able to go to the pool twice a week, maybe 3 times a week, sometimes once a week. So you have to, one has to view this through an optimization challenge and saying, with that, in the context of my life, what's the biggest yield that I can get from it? And it is never going to be just swimming up and down the pool. That's not going to be it. Throw the intensity variance at it.
100%. Yep. And I think it's, it does. And I've learned from you, like, I know I love the over distance, but I might prescribe 1,500 yards to somebody, but I would never say, go swim 1,500 yards. You're going to do 1,500 building by 500. You're going to do 1,500 where you do, 500 at 70%, 500 at 90%, 500 at 80%. So even within the longer swim, we're adding the variance within that. And I know your favorite, lots and lots of 25s, and I think short rest. We get so much more out of doing 20 25s on 5 to 7 seconds rest than you would by just going and trying to swim a 500 hard. Is there a place for a 500 hard? Yes. There certainly is a place for 20 25s as well.
Yeah, exactly. I absolutely agree with you. All right, principle number 4. A goodie here, as I see it on my notes. So, John, lead us away. What's your principle number 4?
All right, principle number 4, swim with others, right? Getting out and swimming with other people. I think there's a great benefit from swimming in a group. One, there's obviously the social aspect of it. It's swimming can be kind of isolating and lonely, and doing it with a group just makes it a lot more fun. I've been swimming my whole life, and I think now I probably swim 3 to 4 times a week. And I always go with a group. If the group isn't going, I tend to bow out these days. Maybe once in a while I'll get in my own swim, but it adds that social aspect. It makes it a little bit more fun. You get the accountability from everyone to show up. You get the support of the people when you're there. Sometimes if there's a group, you might have someone on deck. That's a little bit of added support from maybe a coaching perspective, making sure that you're vetting that person and they know what they're doing a little bit. But there is that added benefit of being able to have some feet in front of you to chase, or have someone chasing your feet. It's going to kind of level you up a little bit and increase what you're able to do in the pool, have you work a little bit harder. I think we all know we're able to push a little bit harder in a race. We've got that environment of everyone around you. When you have that in training in a pool, you're going to get that same benefit of just getting that extra push, that extra oomph from the group, and kind of get someone to, carry you along with them or push you along just a little bit more. And I think that's often underlooked, particularly in triathlon, where we are time starved. I can only get to the pool at this time. I can only go for this amount of time. Sometimes that's not easy with a group, but if you're able to mix that in, I think you're going to see a lot of benefit from it.
Yeah, quite often, actually, I would say I'm always, as a coach, willing to give away a little bit of specificity if I can get people to swim in a group, particularly the right group. And I think sometimes triathletes take the option to swim solo because they say, I've got my very specific set. But generally, the group outweighs the benefits of maybe a little loss of specificity. Now, you have to filter it through. You said it right there. Even with, the classic master's program and someone on deck leading the coaching, you've got to, as a swimmer, also develop a little bit of your own filter to understand what's the lens that this master's coach or coach leading this group swim is looking through, because they may well and likely are looking through the lens of years of pool swimming, getting people ready for pool swimming, and you're a triathlete. And there's nothing wrong with that. It can be symbiotic, but you just need to filter the information and the education that you're getting. I would say that's one thing. I would argue 99 times out of 100 that if the whole pursuit was to get as fast as you can, it's close to impossible for anyone to optimize whatever their level of potential is relative to the amount that they can invest time-wise without swimming with others. So I think it's very, very difficult to maximize your swim without that. And the reason I say that, and maybe you don't agree, or maybe that's a very, very strong way to do it, but also the group tends to provide a sense of, I think, two key ingredients that are so often missing for triathletes: support and accountability. And my argument would be swimming is an individual sport. Now, we were a part of a team sport in swimming, which is university swimming, but ultimately you are swimming your race. And yet there is no international swimmer that doesn't swim in a team environment. At least they're very, very rare, yeah? It's a team sport. In fact, in many ways, it's one of the great team sports, bizarrely, because it's individual. But same as the Purple Patch Pros, we unlocked a performance culture by taking a team approach to an individual sport. And I think that anyone, if you have the opportunity, it's of great value. That would be my argument.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. I think that idea of being able to level up with other people is what's going to actually kind of give you that extra edge, that extra advantage. And I know it's some people might be listening to this and saying, isn't that a little counterintuitive or an easy cop out for a one-to-one coach to not prescribe the swims and tell them just to go swim with the group? There's room for it. But often if I do have a swimmer that says, hey, I've got this master's group, there's a coach on deck, like, great. Give me their phone number, give me their email. Let me chat with them. Let's see how it applies. And they, I've had swimmers say, oh, I don't want to swim with that group. They do a lot of IM work. There's a lot of butterfly. There's a lot of backstroke and breaststroke. It's like, perfect. So let's go do that at least once a week and mix that in. A little bit of mix it up a little bit too. So there's a place in every group for a triathlete. To the extent that you're integrating that, it might vary again. And I'll have athletes like, all right, now we have our race build. Let's come back a little bit. Let's really get specific with what we're doing. But we're going to still integrate that group in some ways throughout if they have that available.
That was a great clarifying point, so thank you. What I wasn't suggesting is just turn your brain off and go swim with the masters and you think you got it all cracked. You really do need to not lose the reins of specificity, and you've got some very specific sessions, but integrating some group swimming, I think, is typically that's where you get the real harmony of it, which is very, very useful. And so we come to principle number 5, John, and so I'm going to hand it over to you. What is it?
All right. Yeah, last one, principle number 5, open water swimming. We're triathletes. We're not pool swimmers. We're open water swimmers. Aside from the rare sprint triathlon that happens in a pool, we're doing our racing. We are competing, and we are kind of, showcasing everything we have learned and how we've grown as a swimmer in the open water. So ultimately, again, stupid answer to a question, how do I get better at open water swimming? Swim in the open water. You're able to take that specificity of what you're doing in a race and apply it to that. Now, when I say go swim in the open water, it isn't simply heading to the beach, swimming 20 minutes out, swimming 20 minutes back and calling it a day. Is that a way to get acclimated and have an understanding of the open water? Sure. But again, it comes down to what we've said before, being efficient with your time. And so if you are going to go swim open water, which you should, I think it's really important to make sure that you're going into it with a plan. You can create structured workouts in the open water. They don't have to be overly complicated, but you can create this structure of speed variance. You can still do intervals. You can do race simulations. You can practice takeout speed. You can practice shifting your speed. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, whether it's counting strokes, setting up an auto, distance on your watch if you're using one. There are ways to mix it up and build in that variance. And again, variance is going to be key, even in the open water. So I think it's really important, if you are going to do open water, which you should, going in with a plan, having some structure around that. I mean, a pool offers a great opportunity, a great medium in a controlled environment to do the things we were talking about, like toys and drills and really mixing up different intervals. But ultimately, we can get into the open water and do some really race-specific targeted work for where you're going to need to perform, which is in the open water. So ultimately, what I would really like to see, that last principle, is people getting into the open water as much as they can. I think, obviously there's room for pool swimming. I think there should be a little bit of a balance, but ultimately we really want to integrate open water swimming. And I understand I'm saying that from a point of privilege a little bit, living on the coast of Maine, and granted not all year long, but for a few months, yeah, that opportunity is a half a mile away. Some people might not have that. And so it's hard for me to say that is a big principle, which I still think it is, when I know there are people where it's just not an option. And I think with that, maybe take a mental approach around that as like, I can't get to the open water, but I can still open water swim. And what I mean by that is you can take advantage of the pool and you can implement some open water specific work into the pool. So mixing up the sighting a little bit, working on some of those open water drills. If you find that your pool has an area, I know my pool sometimes will open up half the pool, so it's got no lane lines. Get in there and try to practice swimming around without the walls a little bit, not the whole time, a little bit, mixing that up. If you've got a group and they're willing to be up for it, you can do some close contact swimming. I love doing this when we have camps and we have people together. Line people four up on a wall, everyone going at the same time, bumping and grinding and getting used to a little bit of that contact. But I think if you can get into the open water, it's even better. You could do it with a group, tying in that last principle. You can really improve where we want to improve, which is in the open water swimming, getting ready for racing.
Well, I think in some ways, just I don't have much to add. I agree wholeheartedly. But you sort of got three elements. You've got pool swimming, where you're developing technique, building muscular endurance, cardiovascular conditioning, all of your intervals. Then you've got pool swimming, where you've got an open water mindset, where you're trying to simulate, you're trying to integrate sighting and some of the skills. Then you actually have the golden application. And in that open water, it's not just going there, and if you just go and swim for distance or swim for time, it's almost like going to a 5-star restaurant and just having, the bread rolls. You're missing the meat and the vegetables and the salad and everything that goes around with it, because you can actually really simulate your race experience. And then you show up on race day and it's got this word. What is it? Familiarity. And with familiarity is confidence. And with confidence is the absolute optimization of your performance potential, your hard work that you put into it. So we covered a lot there, didn't we?
We did. We got right down to it.
Fantastic. Well, John, thank you so much. I know that we're going to do a series of these and every couple of months or so, but those are the 5 principles. Build it around, and I really appreciate you being on the show today.
Oh, happy to be here again, repeating, and always happy to talk swimming.
And I guess my last question, if folks are interested in doing some work with you on video assessment and the swim program, are you willing to take a couple on?
Absolutely. Anyone willing to come listen to me and get some advice, I'm happy to take a look at some video and really work with people. I enjoy doing it, and I like the challenge of everyone's got their own challenges, and so that's nice to be able to dive in with people. So happy to take as many people as we want back on for that swim analysis.
And of course, we're heading off to South Carolina very soon in a couple of months for our training camp, of which you lead all the swimming, so people can also have an opportunity to work with you directly there, which will be fun, with me overlooking and having a little look at the same time. So that'll be fun. We're looking forward to that. All right, guys. Thank you very much, John. We will see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Guys, thanks so much for joining, and thank you for listening. I hope that you enjoyed the new format. You can never miss an episode by simply subscribing. Head to the Purple Patch channel of YouTube
and you will find it there and you could subscribe. Of course, I'd like to ask you, if you will subscribe, also share it with your friends, and it's really helpful if you leave a nice positive review in the comments. Now, any questions that you have, let me know. Feel free to add a comment and I will try my best to respond and support you on your performance journey. And in fact, as we commence this video podcast experience, if you have any feedback at all, as mentioned earlier in the show, we would love your help in helping us to improve. Simply email us at info@purplepatchfitness.com or leave it in the comments of the show at the Purple Patch page, and we will get you dialed in. We'd love constructive feedback. We are in a growth mindset, as we like to call it. And so feel free to share with your friends. But as I said, let's build this together. Let's make it something special. It's really fun. We're really trying hard to make it a special experience, and we want to welcome you into the Purple Patch community. With that, I hope you have a great week. Stay healthy, have fun, keep smiling, doing whatever you do. Take care.